Hello, everyone. This is Chala Dincoy, CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert. Welcome to another edition of my podcast, Naked Marketing. Now, I am like wearing sweaters. I am definitely not naked today. I don't know, which part of the world are you in?
I am in the Connecticut part of the world, which is on the East Coast.
Yeah, so I'm in Toronto, so I feel your pain. But at least I'm sure you're probably, getting out more than us because you're probably vaccinated.
I am vaccinated. I am double vaccinated. So I'm completely bulletproof, sort of.
Wow.
Um,
Bulletproof. I love that.
but the thing is, I don't think people are getting out that much anyway. I went out with some people the other night to dinner. They
Yeah,
were double vaccinated and they didn't want to sit inside. So we sat outside. It was
really.
freezing. Yeah. People are being careful.
Good for that. Well, it's freezing today here too. So it's lovely to have you, Art. So
Thank you for
tell
having me.
us, oh, my pleasure. Tell us what you do for a living and who you help.
Well, right now I am writing. I spent the last 35 years in the television business,
Mm.
cable television to be exact. I worked at HBO. I worked at Comedy Central. I worked at Court TV. I consulted after that to some very interesting corporations doing some very interesting projects. My favorite, I have to say, was working with Panasonic on their 3D television initiative, which did not go very well.
Oh, sounds
For,
really
well,
cool.
for Panasonic, for
Yeah.
me, I had a great time.
Oh,
We were putting together a 3D television network for them, but
wow.
3D television really never caught on. So
Wow.
anyway,
Did they have the VR technology back then? Because that would have
yeah,
competed, wouldn't it?
they no, not really actually. There have been many movies and television shows made in 3D,
Yeah.
but most people can't see them because they don't have a 3D television set. So
Well, yeah.
Panasonic wanted to sell 3D television sets. The problem was uh, they didn't realize that they'd get so much pushback on the glasses.
That's what I was just gonna say. Don't you need those glasses?
You definitely need the glasses. There's no really good 3D technology for television 3D technology or movie technology for that matter that does not require glasses.
Uh,
But
yeah,
interestingly, and since we're talking marketing here,
yeah.
3D for marketing is going to be a big deal because there is a technology where if you look at something that's far away, they
Mm.
can make it look very 3D. It's a technology that's just starting to be adopted by outdoor advertisers.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. Because I thought the new, everything's gonna go into VR now, and they've developed so much. I mean, I go and play with my little guy before the pandemic, where they let you have a mask, like, and then share it with the whole world. I'd stand on the top of buildings and try to walk out, and scare myself silly, but like it's being used for safety and health and training, and it's just really great. And like with the army, it's wonderful, and it's been used for all sorts of dangerous training for years. So it's fascinating. That's
It is
fascinating.
fascinating. And I will say the 3D is also being used for fascinating things, including surgery,
Yeah,
because it makes surgery, when they're looking
yeah,
through their lenses,
yeah,
so much better because they can see everything in 3D. And before they were sort of estimating,
yeah.
so 3D will be with us for a long time.
My God. So what did you do in the TV world? Were you a producer and you told people, no, you can't be on my show? Were you that
No,
guy?
I no, I started out in the TV business as a financial analyst.
Oh, good God.
Yeah, well, it gets worse. Before I went into the TV business, I was an economist in Washington, D.C., working on econometric models of the energy economy for the Department of Energy, and some other interesting projects for EPA and places like that. I loved being an economist. That was my first job out of school.
You are joking. Oh my God.
I kid you not.
How did you get lured to the dark side?
Uh,
Dark side of
Wait a
TV?
second. You got to be specific. Which is the dark side, economics or
Exactly. Right.
television?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know that I pitched myself to be on like 20 appearances in like a year. And I know it's one of the things that my coach used to say is only the people who really want to be on TV are on TV, because it's hard.
TV is
It,
hard.
it's hard. So that's why I call it the dark side. How did you even get over there?
Well, it's interesting. I wanted to work in television after I finished working in economics. And that was a moment I had in economics. I was working as a consultant, doing great, having fun, working with really smart people. I was very smart in those days too. It's been downhill since there. Then I must
Pandemic.
admit it's a tough admission. But I went back to business school
Okay.
and I decided I was going to go back to business school and then try and get a job in the entertainment business.
What?
Uh, my first job was at CBS as a financial analyst. I mean, I could not walk into the entertainment business as a producer, a director, or even a programmer. I mean, I just had no training, no background, none of that. I was a student of comedy. I loved comedy from the time I was a kid. And I watched all the comedy that I could, and I listened to all the records, and I did some writing of comedy and performing in college. But I really didn't see myself as a comedy writer or performer. So there I was working at CBS, really not having a great time, I have to say, because it was not just that it wasn't what I wanted to do, but it was a big corporation. I could have been working at IBM at the time.
Mm,
Really, lots of layers of management. I was nowhere near the programming, the product of the company.
mm.
But a friend of mine called, said, "I'm over here at HBO. This place is unbelievable." He said, HBO is going to change television. It was kind of like the Netflix of its day, it was
Right.
like
Yeah. I
new, it was
remember.
cool. They were putting on uncut,
Yeah.
unedited movies and comedy.
Yeah.
So I went over there. Oh, he said they're looking for somebody to do econometric forecasting of their subscribers. And he said,
Oh,
"You're the only guy I know in the business who could do that." I said,
yeah.
"Okay." So I interviewed, got the job, and that's what I spent a couple of years doing for them is forecasting.
That's fascinating. And then how did you then make the leap? You just bust into somebody's office like on TV and said, I got a dream.
There was a small amount of that, but mostly it was about doing a good job on what I'd been doing,
Yeah.
the forecasting. Then I got put in a new business development area. Now, the new business development area there was really put together for one purpose. And that was my first real look at marketing. Um, and the purpose was they were developing a pay television channel called Festival, which was going to be a flanker brand to HBO.
Mm.
And it was going to be a brand that had no sex, violence, or bad language.
Oh,
And the
like Disney,
reason, sorry,
like Disney, I guess.
well, we'll get to that.
Mhm.
The reason they wanted to do that is because they found out that HBO, people who weren't taking HBO, the biggest reason was
Because
that
of
they
that.
didn't want sex, violence, and bad language in their home. They had kids, they were religious,
Yeah,
whatever the reason. So HBO said, "Okay, easy. We put together a no sex, violence, and bad language
great.
channel, and we advertise it as such, and people will take it because that's what they want." And they put on airline versions of films and other clean stuff, which gets me to my first big mistake in marketing,
Okay. Yes, I'm glad
which
you're
which which I witnessed more than perpetrated.
hmm.
And that is, it's very hard to sell an entertainment property based on what it doesn't have.
Say more.
Well, you're trying. How do people sell television or movies or anything? They sell it by making it exciting, and some of the ways to make it exciting include putting some sex, violence, or bad language in the promotion of it. But this was a whole channel that said we don't have any sex, violence, and bad language. So people, as much as they said we don't want that in our home, the sex, violence, and bad language, when it came to actually purchasing something or subscribing to something, that wasn't a big it held no attraction for them, and the channel failed.
Wow. So you
Didn't
gave
even
what they
did
said they wanted is the mistake that I'm writing down.
Yeah, well, that was number one. Number two was we tried a second positioning, which was good for the whole family. And you already answered that one, which is, hey, isn't that Disney? Well, it wasn't Disney at the time. It
Mm,
wasn't Disney. Disney was a kids channel. They originally put themselves together as a
yeah,
kids channel.
yeah.
But then they saw what we were doing, and under the heading of never underestimate the competition, Disney said, hey, wait a second, we can put clean movies on it at night and advertise it as a channel that's good for the whole family, which is
Mhm.
what they did, which was the other reason we went out of business.
Wow.
So those were some
I
interesting
got a
mistakes.
couple there. Yeah. Never underestimate the competition, not differentiated versus the big competitor. Those are some mistakes that I'm writing down. These are
Yeah.
good. So,
Yeah.
Art, did you ever become an entrepreneur after?
Well, I would say intrapreneur.
Okay.
First, because what I did was after that went down, I had had an idea for a comedy channel since I was pretty much since business school. But when I came out of business school, despite the fact that there were a lot of television channels coming up, ESPN, all sports,
Mhm.
CNN, all news, and I and MTV, all music. I couldn't figure out why there was no comedy network. Why? Because I
Ah,
wanted to work at one. I loved
it's
comedy.
natural. Yeah.
Yeah. But there was no comedy network. And so I'd been thinking about it for a long time. And I went and first thing I did is I went and pitched the head of HBO programming because I thought that would be a good place to start. Her name was Bridget Potter. I went in, I got an appointment with her. I didn't know her. I was a financial marketing analyst guy. I didn't know any of this stuff. And I said, Bridget, I think HBO should do an all comedy network. And she said, stop right there. That's the worst idea I've ever heard. And she proceeded to tell me why she thought it was the worst idea she'd ever heard. She said, nobody wants all comedy channel. Nobody wants to watch that much comedy. There's plenty of comedy on TV already. Nobody wants new cable channels right now. And why would HBO risk its reputation on that?
Wow. Was she wrong, eh?
Well, she was wrong. And I knew she was wrong, but I was, it was kind of like a big bucket of cold water poured on me and my idea. So I walked out of the office kind of crestfallen. But as you said, she was wrong, and I knew that in my heart. And I went back to my office and I started writing it up, figuring, okay, HBO's not doing it. I'm not working. My project festival just went down. I'm going to have to get a new job eventually. So I started writing it up, thinking I'd have to send out my resume, and I'd staple that to my resume. Maybe
Good.
somebody give me a job.
Wow.
While
And
I was doing that, and this is a few weeks later because I worked hard on it, my boss's boss walked by and said, "What are you doing? You don't have anything to do. Your festival got canceled." And I said, "I'm working on this idea for a new channel I had." And he said, "Let me see." And he took a look and he said, "Wow, I think the chairman of HBO should see this." And I said, "Great." And he said, "Right now, let's go." And
wow.
he walked me down to the chairman's office. Now, the chairman at the time was Michael Fuchs.
Mm.
He had just been named the most powerful man in Hollywood. I was a financial analyst, um, much lower than him on the org chart, to say the least. It was quite a moment for me. And we just walked in and I pitched my heart out and sold the vision. And Michael Fuchs said, okay, let's try it.
Wow. So then what happened?
Well, we did, he said, let's try it. That didn't mean let's launch it. He suggested we do some research and some financial projections and demo tape and all the other things that went into it. And suddenly I'm in I'm where I want to be, working with programming and television and comedy, in a way that I always wanted to work. However, there was a problem, and that is I didn't know anything about these things. I didn't know anything about the comedy business. They teamed me up with a guy named Stu Smiley. The first thing he said to me, Stu was the head of HBO comedy programming, and the first thing he said to me was, "What do you know about programming?" And the answer was nothing. And I really had to. I spent a long time trying to prove myself to guys like Stu that I could be part of the comedy community, but I had to learn the ropes. And Stu certainly wasn't too anxious to teach me, and it was tough. It was
So
tough.
what was critical in selling your idea, do you think?
Vision and
Mm,
passion.
great, because you didn't give up.
Well, the passion, you talk about passion as a not giving up thing, but you have to bring passion to every meeting uh, that you have about it, including the elevator pitch, which is
Yeah.
sometimes literally in the elevator. You have to be so excited about it that even if whoever you're talking to doesn't hear a word you're saying or even understand what you're talking about, they still think, wow, this guy or gal is really passionate about this. Must be something there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Vision. Yeah, that was an important thing too, because I learned pretty quickly that selling an all comedy channel as an all comedy channel wasn't the whole process. You had to sell what it would become in 10 years. That's what I found out. And I said that to Michael. I said, if this thing works, in 10 years, we will be the center of the comedy universe. And that worked a lot better than saying 24 hours of comedy a day, which
Yeah.
sounds daunting. But the idea that we would be known for comedy at that time, who was known for comedy? Saturday Night Live,
Yeah.
HBO, because they were putting on uncut specials, and they were great comedy specials. HBO was really known for comedy.
Mm.
And a third channel, A&E, which was not about comedy, but they had a stand-up show that they put on
Mm.
every night called Evening at the Improv. And so they were starting to get that comedy space. I
Yeah.
also mentioned that to Michael. I said, you don't want to cede the comedy space to
Mm.
A&E? Come on, really?
Yeah.
So that's how I sold it.
So tell us about the book. I know you're writing a book now, but you've already written one. So what's
Yes, I
that?
wrote a book. It's called Constant Comedy: How I Started Comedy Central and Lost My Sense of Humor.
Ah,
And it's a memoir, which is my view of what was going on from the time from the time I thought of the whole thing through pitching it and getting it started and all the other things that happened. And the subtitle, which people find interesting, I didn't really lose my sense of humor for very long, but I wanted to use that as a subtitle because I wanted to show people how difficult it was to get these things done.
mm.
People think, hey, Comedy Central, by the way, Comedy Central is celebrating its 30th anniversary this month, which
Oh,
is, something I'm proud of. I didn't work there
congrats.
for 30 years. I worked there for 8, but the idea that I got that up and running and,
Sure.
on,
For sure.
and what it's become, it's great. Um, but I really wanted people to understand that Comedy Central was not successful from the beginning. As a matter of fact, it was a dismal failure for the first 6 months to a year. I went
Mm.
to work every day thinking we were going to get shut down that day. And every day I went to work thinking, how can I make this better? What can I do less of that's not working? What can I do more of that's working? And that was, how I did it.
That's a fabulous, mindset for all entrepreneurs and obviously intrapreneurs. It's the Kaizen, continual improvement, tweaking all the time, never giving up, always looking at the vision. These are great lessons, Art. Where can people reach you?
Well, I have a website, artbellwriter.com, where you
Mhm.
can learn more about my book, where to buy it, what it's about. And I have some other writing on the website and an interview with myself that people find amusing. So that's a good place to go. And then you can certainly buy my book on Amazon or other places where books are sold.
So, what's the new book about? Are you allowed to say?
The new book that I'm writing,
Mhm.
I love writing. I'm writing fiction now.
Oh my God.
Comedy was the first part of my career, really, in television, and really the pretty much the greatest adventure in my career. And
Yeah.
people have asked me, "Wow, are you going to write about the rest of your career?" And I certainly could, but you know what? I'm having fun writing short stories and sort of working on a novel, actually.
Well,
So that's what I'm doing now.
Well, congratulations. It is so wonderful to meet you and get to know about your story. And our listeners and our viewers can find you on your website. Thanks so much
Yes,
for being here.
thank you for having me.
All the best.